to my lecture on social media marketing. There's a certain amount of irony in this presentation because I am sure that many of you know a great deal more, or at least are certainly far more active on social media than I am. So we need to keep that caveat in mind. At the same time, and my children will tell you, I know nothing about social media. At the same time, I do know about marketing strategy. And so what we're really going to talk about today is not so much specifically which photograph you should choose for your Instagram post, but rather what should your general strategy be, where is social media going, and what can you do as a winery or a business owner, what should you be doing to take advantage of this stuff. You'll notice there's a wonderful map in the background there that we'll get another look at here. Again, the element that social media brings to all of us is a connection. And if we understand that all marketing should be consumer-centric, in fact, one of the great definitions of marketing is that you define everything you do at your company in terms of what it means to the customer. That's a good definition of marketing. And if that's the case, then social media should play a key role in your marketing. And I love the IC North Yahoo Windows Live, and I love the Sea of Memes. Anyway, lots of fun on that map. You can spend time looking at that later. So, as in all marketing, before you decide that you're going to have a social media campaign, you need a plan. And I always remember Popeye's great line, "We needs a strategy." So what is your plan? What does your plan start with? Well, it starts with market analysis. How are you different from everyone else? If you can't explain this, your social media won't have the impact it needs. So again, it is so critical to get this stuff done first. And of course, most people start with, well, we'll do this and this and this, and eventually our positioning will evolve. Your positioning cannot evolve. It needs to be set right at the beginning. Now, you may have to adapt it a little bit, but if you don't understand what your positioning is, if you don't understand what your key point of differentiation is, you can't do good social media, because everything you do, every post you make, in one way or another should communicate that unique selling proposition. And the second thing you need to know in order to really do good marketing is which segment of the market is going to be most attracted to that. So you need to understand your message, your differentiation, and your target market, something we've talked about a lot in other marketing lectures. If you don't have those, if you can't put those on a cocktail napkin, if you can't tell them to me in 3 simple sentences, don't start doing social media. Go back and do your homework and get your key message, your key positioning, your point of differentiation, and your target audience, so that you can really do social media in a way that will build results. Okay? So some of you may want to stop the lecture here and just go back and do those, and I'll wait for you until you come back. Actually, you're going to stop the lecture. I'll keep going. Okay, let's talk about how social media is different from other marketing campaigns. And my suggestion to you is it's not different even a tiny little bit. There are really 3 steps. You need to establish 3 clear goals for your program. For example, one goal might be, we have identified a key target audience, graduates of the Culinary Institute of America. One of our goals will be to sign up, have 1,000 of these graduates follow us on Facebook. Okay, that's a legitimate, clear goal. You can then explain why that's going to help your marketing, but that's your goal. Then you need to look at a clear budget. Okay, how much is that worth? And that is what ultimately leads you to the third, which is, now how do we measure that success? One of the challenges with social media is that by measuring things like followers on Facebook, that is a legitimate marketing metric, but there is a huge disconnect, and every company will tell you this, a huge disconnect between those who follow your Facebook feed and those who buy your products. That transformation from follower to customer, from follower to sales, is an extremely difficult transition. So if that's the case, beware of creating a whole series of goals that only measure social media and don't measure anything else, because you can end up with a wonderfully long list of followers and people who are following you on Twitter and people who are reading your or looking at your Instagram pages and all the rest, and then it turns out that nobody's buying your product. So be very careful about that. Don't just settle for, we want to have this many followers, we want to have this many in our feed. Okay? Not different from other marketing campaigns. You need to understand what you're trying to do, you need to develop a budget to do it, and then you need a way of measuring, okay, did we get this done? Are we successful? Well, yeah, some of you may recognize all of these. I recognize some of them. But these are all various social media platforms, and of course they rise and fall. 10 years ago, Facebook was the be-all and end-all. Today, Instagram is considered more powerful. Twitter is considered more powerful. My guess is that 5 years from now, there will be a whole new set of these kinds of programs and platforms that people are using. So the question is, well, which ones do I really invest in? I'm going to say there's only one way to find that out. Remember your marketing plan. You identified your point of differentiation. You identified your clear message. You identified your target audience. Well, the people who can tell you which of these platforms will be most successful at reaching your target audience, it's your target audience. So you might ask them, you might figure out ways to engage with them on social media, ask them which they prefer, etc., etc. But ultimately, if marketing is customer-centric, and it has to be, then the best social media platforms for you to be on are the ones where your customers live. And just for an example, it is expected that Instagram users, which were growing at 10% in 2018, are expected to grow 1.8% by 2023. So absolutely flattening the curve, an expression that we have now become far too familiar with thanks to coronavirus. But that's happening in Instagram. It happened already with Facebook. You're going to see this, and again, you need to be paying attention to this, and you need to ask your customers, okay, so which ones are you most committed to? And maybe not which ones are you on the most, but which ones you find most believable, most rewarding. Those are the sorts of questions you need to be asking your customers to find out the best way to reach your customers. Now let's talk about some of the best practices in social media. You have perhaps the most remarkable tennis player of all time there in front of you, and what she is doing is hitting a return, because one of the things you have to do in social media is you have to respond to your customers, and you have to do that in a very timely manner. Emails, text, reviews, whatever happens, anything that comes up, you should, of course, have Google Alerts on your computer. At my agency, when I was running the agency, we had people that just had a separate screen over on the side of their computer that was just set to Google Alerts. Anytime a client's name popped up in a Google Alert, they immediately responded. Somebody writes you an email, they sound like a crank. Doesn't matter, you still need to answer them. Send a text message. People don't send text messages because they want to wait 3 or 4 days to get an answer. They send text messages because they want an answer within 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That's your job. And even when it comes to reviews, whether these be an important journalist who writes a story in the New York Times, an email to them, "Dear Eric, love the column, thank you so much. If you're ever in Napa, I'd love to buy you a drink." To a Yelp review, "So sorry that you had an unfortunate experience at our hotel. I've talked to our manager on staff that day. He's talked to the employee. We've decided, yes, that there are some things we need to change. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. If you come back, we promise you that you will not experience this again. And in fact, here's what we're going to do to make you, to entice you to come back again." You need to respond to all of this stuff. And if you need to respond to it all, It means you need to follow it all. You need to know about it all, which means you need to have that screen over on the side of your computer that is just plugged into Google Alerts saying, somebody just wrote something about your company. You need to create content for these social media platforms, and each one requires something slightly different. But all of them, I would say, the primary goal should not be, let's tell people how great we are. As you have learned from any number of politicians as well as poor company social media, getting told someone is great all the time, frankly, gets boring most of the time. And so the question is, what do you talk about? And I use terms like memorable. Memorable means when somebody sees it, they want to share it. When somebody sees it, they want to call up their brother and talk to him about it. That's memorable. Make them remarkable. Make them ooh and ah. Those are the kinds of things we want. And of course, we have learned for many years what makes people ooh and ah on the internet is kitten pictures and puppy pictures. And well, yeah, that's true. But you know what? Instead of making fun of all those people, if you want to make people ooh and ah, learn from that. We'll have some examples that I'll show you how wineries actually do some of that stuff. It's pretty fun. Twitter feeds, make them powerful. Make them the sort of thing that people read and say, oh, I gotta retweet this one. This is just too good to pass up. That's the goal. And then finally, if you're going to do a YouTube video, I'm sorry, if you're a professional company, even if you're a small family winery that handcrafts its wines, blah, 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 you need to make these more or less professional. There are a few wineries that don't do this. If you ever get a chance to see a video from Duplin Cellars in North Carolina, it's two brothers. And they are, if they were from the Midwest, I'd call them hayseeds. They take great pride in that. They take great pride in the fact that most of their wines are very affordably priced, and they invite you to just come on down and drink the wine. And they are very funny, and they are very informal, and they are very good at what they do. So if you're going to do it, either do it so people say, wow, that was good, or don't do it. Simply filling your feed with stuff because, we have to get out a Facebook post this week is a really lousy way to do social media. And for example, I'm always amazed by the fact that a lot of wineries plan their Facebook feeds out a few days in advance. What are we going to do next? There should be an annual calendar. If you run a magazine, you are responsible for what is called the editorial calendar. And that means you tell your journalists and your advertising salespeople, by the way, a year in advance what they're going to be writing about, so they can keep things percolating in their mind, so they can start looking for ways to fill that space when it comes to October and it's time to write about Napa Valley Cabernet. So you should do the same thing with your Facebook feed. You should have an annual calendar, and it should be set out month by month. This month we're going to focus on that, or Tuesdays we always focus on the winemaker and his pets. Thursdays we always focus about the tasting room and what interesting people come in. I don't care what it is, but you need to have a long-term plan, a schedule for how you're going to do this stuff, because otherwise what happens is you start to run out of ideas. You start posting the same things over again. You end up just sticking stuff out there because you got to do something. I mean, we haven't posted on our Facebook page in a year and a half, and then you have a crappy Facebook page. So plan, plan, plan. So now that I've given you the ground rules, I'm going to talk you through some examples of people who I think have really done some very clever things with this. This is our old friend V. Satui. And remember what people love to see in Facebook feeds? They love animals. Well, it's National Dog Day, and V. Satui actually came out with a post where he and his dog, and the dog, of course, has a V. Satui wine ribbon in his mouth, and he sent a little post out saying, hope you're celebrating National Dog Day with your best friend, and hope you're drinking a bottle of V. Satui wine while you're doing it. And for anyone who has any affection for dogs at all, that's a face that anyone could love. It's a memorable Facebook post, and the fact that Dario Satui, posted that and talked about his love for his dog. That's a great way to build a little connection, a human connection with all of those people who follow your Facebook feed. Pretty simple, pretty nice, pretty easy. The amazing thing is most wineries posted nothing on National Dog Day, and I don't know why. This gentleman makes wine. He's a small family winemaker. He clearly ferments everything in carboys, these little 5-gallon jugs. But what got my attention and what got the attention of every photographer or every journalist who's ever visited him is his use of a rather unique form of a fermentation lock. Yes, these are condoms. And he puts these on his bottles primarily because they're cheap and they're easy, and so he figures it's better to do it this than any other way. But in the meantime, he immediately tells you he's somebody who doesn't care much for those big, complicated scientific studies. He's someone who doesn't buy into all that modern technology. Simple, sweet, straight from the heart, pretty direct, pretty clear marketing message here. If you meet this guy, you've already got a sense of what it will be like to talk to him. And that's that human connection. That's the connection that social media should really try to achieve. And I think this guy did it pretty well. And Caitlin White did this, one of the great tweets of all time. Remember, Jesus was the one who spent his last free night on earth drinking wine with his friends. Pretty great line. And of course, interestingly, I've posted in August rather than, for example, around Easter. But this is the kind of thing that gets people to read Twitter. And your notes, tasting notes about Sauvignon Blanc, or how excited you are that your new Sauvignon Blanc is going to be released, that's not a memorable tweet. The fact that you just got a gold medal, boy, you know, the first time a winery gets a gold medal, that's a tweet. By the time, how many wine competitions are there in the world, and how many wineries tweet out that they won a gold medal? That by the time you get one of those, it's old hat. But if you can think of clever, new, interesting ways to say something, that's worth doing. And in this case, this was a tweet that was retweeted all over the place by everyone in the wine industry because it was clever, it was focused, and retweeting is, in some ways, if it's this good, retweeting this is way better than coming up with a post about how your wine got a silver medal at the Los Angeles County Fair. One of the biggest, to me, disconnects in the world of wine is the number of wineries that don't provide free Wi-Fi. And Barossa Valley has come up even with a plan on this. They literally have a poster that includes all the various wineries that have free Wi-Fi. And of course, people on vacation, what's the first question they ask? Well, it's one of two. Where's your restroom? Or what's the Wi-Fi code? You remember that if people use your Wi-Fi, you generally have access to their emails. You collect their emails because they sign into your Wi-Fi. That allows you then to make a human connection. But it only allows you to make a human connection if you send them something. So you collect their emails and maybe just a note back with a quick 3-question survey. We noticed you were at our winery today. Would you be willing to answer 3 quick questions about how much fun you had? And just use those as a way of giving feedback to your employees, but also give that as a way to every survey who comes in. Thank you so much for participating in your survey, and give them another reason to contact you. Remember, it's like dating. Every time you talk to them, you want to get a response back, but when you talk to them, you then want to give them another reason to give another response back. So this is a very effective way. Barossa does a good job of this. A lot of wineries, for some reason, don't include free Wi-Fi in what people get when they walk in the door. And to me, that is just almost criminally negligent because, of course, on the one hand, you want people to post about the wonderful time they're having at your winery. And on the other hand, you're not giving them the technical support they need to do that. So it turns out they can't post from from your winery. They have to drive down the road and post at the restaurant, at which point they post the picture of the shrimp cocktail they ordered rather than a bottle of your wine, and you just lost some social media points. Pure, simple, easy. So many people don't do this well. give them something to take a picture of. This is my dear friend Silvia Loriga. She is the marketing director for the Consorzio de Vino Nobile de Montepulciano. And as part of our conversations, we were talking about what she could do to give people something to take a picture of. And remember, this is in their new headquarters, which is in the Fortaleza, where the foundation is literally a 7th century BC Etruscan wine ruin, and then they've built their tasting room on top of that. And over in one corner there is this bottle, and it is in fact a bottle. The label celebrates the 50th anniversary of the DOC. Vino Nobile de Montepulciano was the first official DOC in Italy. And so they love pointing that out to people. For the 50th anniversary, they had a big party and a tasting. But she created this bottle. Now, it needs to be pointed out that Silvia is quite short, so tall people who stand in this bottle have to kind of bend over a little bit. But she created it short so that even short people can get their picture taken. She thinks like a consumer. And she says literally scores of people a day take this photograph, and then it's got all the information you need on it, from Twitter to Facebook and all the rest. All of their information is there. It's a perfect example of giving somebody something to shoot when they're at your winery, and they now have their own bottle of Vino Nobile de Montepulciano, and they are now telling all of their friends about it everywhere. You saw this in one of my other lectures. This is Carlos Creek Winery and in Minnesota, and Carlos Creek Winery does this very clever thing. This is the sign to their restroom, and the wonderful thing about it is they also have free Wi-Fi, and it's actually in big banners behind every tasting bar in the winery. There is the information about their free Wi-Fi. But the other thing they do is have countless people take pictures of this particular sign and send it to all their friends saying, guess where we are. The only criticism of this is I would like to have the logo of the winery somewhere on this sign. But other than that, this is pretty great social media marketing. One of the ways that you build relationships with your customers is, if you cannot possibly talk to all of them personally, find some other way of delivering information. The sign here with the QR code, pretty simple. This is Chateau Montelena in the Napa Valley. They have a rather famous collection of Oriental Asian gardens, complete with a couple of little picnic tables and other things. And visitors are encouraged to tour the gardens, but the winery cannot possibly afford the staff to give tours of the gardens on a regular basis. They're absolutely swamped with visitors in their tasting rooms, in their private club tasting rooms, etc. And so what they've done is they simply create a series of QR code billboards where you can stop, and if you have questions about what you're seeing here, that QR code takes you to a little site which will explain exactly what you're seeing right here. Another way to use QR codes, by the way, are on shelf talkers, table tents, whether that shelf talker in a retail environment, table tent in a restaurant environment, where it can give additional information on a winery. And again, wineries do a usually pretty terrible job about this. When you click on the QR code for the bottle, it usually sends you to a fact sheet on the wine, which tells you the Brix at harvest and the fermentation temperature and the number of days it spent in a stainless steel tank, and all the stuff that no consumer could ever care about. On the other hand, years ago we did a project with an Argentine brand where when you clicked on the QR code, the screen on your phone went black. Just a little icon to indicate that you were listening to music, so they could turn the sound on if they didn't. And the voice of Carlos Gardel, the legendary tango singer, came out of your phone singing a song, a tango of broken hearts and unrequited love, and it brought Argentina to life for people. That's a much more effective way to use QR codes than telling people that the Brix at harvest was 23.7. Barrel Oak Winery celebrates the winery dog every year on the winery dog's birthday. This is all sorts of fun. I won't click on the link, but you can click on the link when you get a chance. Remember, Barrel Oak Winery, one of the rules in marketing is if your name is more than one word long, people are going to abbreviate it with an acronym. And Barrel Oak Winery, of course, spells BOW. And they very quickly cottoned onto this and thought, BOW, we're going to be a dog-friendly winery. They are a dog-friendly winery. They have dog days. They welcome your dog at Barrel Oak Winery, and they have an official Birch dog. That's him right there, and they celebrate Birch's birthday, which they call Birch Day, and they even create a little video about how Birch spends his birthday, which is visiting with tourists and wandering around the winery and eventually diving in after they sing Happy Birch Day to him. He dives into I assume, liver and steak flavored birthday cake. But the other thing they do, which I think is wonderful fun, is they have been known to put a live feed on their website, and Birch, during their events at the winery, wanders around the winery greeting people. And so what they've done is they put a GoPro camera on Birch's back. So what you see from the video feed is a little bit of the event and how much fun it is, people having fun, but it's all taken, from knee-high level because it's on Birch's back, and then you see endless scenes of people coming up to Birch and saying, "Oh, you're such a good boy, booga booga." Hysterical, very funny, clearly sets a tone and a style for the winery. People know when they go to Barrel Oak Winery, it's going to be a relaxed, family-oriented, fun kind of winery. By the way, they have a second winery next door, which is much more serious, much more elegant, and so they offer both experiences to their visitors. But this is a wonderful example of somebody taking advantage of the resources they have at hand to sell and to tell a message about their winery that most wineries are afraid to even talk about. Wine Roads New Zealand, they have a wonderful little program that you plug right into your GPS unit, and it will take you on a tour of local wineries. So very simple use. You can either get it for your phone or you simply buy it on as part of the program on the GPS when you rent your car. It solves every problem. It tells you where to go, what turnoff to take, and it delivers you right to the front door every time. Again, for tourists in a place like New Zealand where public transport is relatively limited, certainly in the wine country, this is a great solution, works extremely well, and there's no reason why any wine road, any wine region, whether it be the Napa Valley, admittedly not quite so important in the Napa Valley because so many of the wineries are right on Highway 29. But if you're trying to develop a brand image and a destination out of some of these lesser known regions around the world, great idea to simply come in and say, okay, good, we have an easy way for you to work your way around the region. Here are the wineries. Just open up this app on your phone and it will guide you from place to place and show you a wonderful time. This is a software program an app called Vines, developed by one of my students, and she actually does that same sort of thing that we're talking about with New Zealand, but she does this for wine regions around the world based on what you're interested in. So each winery has a page, and the page lists what the winery does, what kind of wines they make, all sorts of basic information. But then it allows you to select, I am most interested in Zinfandel, or I am most interested in Pinot Noir, and then it will help tailor itineraries for you based on the input you give it. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of organizing a wine tour. It's a pretty clever idea. The challenge is, of course, getting wine regions to sign up enough wineries so that it's really definitive. And that's the struggle she's had. As usual in the wine industry, there are ways to do it. Getting the wineries to cooperate, getting the wineries to actually participate in a program that will sell their wine is harder than you might imagine. And then, of course, you need to follow your brand on the major software platforms. What do people say about you on Facebook? You need to be part of that conversation. I talked about this right up front. You need to understand what's being said, and you need to respond. In order to have friends, you need to make friends. And in order to make friends, you need to participate. So not enough just to post a Facebook post once a week. You also need to follow that page. You need to respond to people who like or comment on your post. You need to have a regular process of communicating with these folks, not just on Facebook, but on all the social media platforms. So this is actually a pretty big job, and I often worry that wineries often assign this to a young person who knows social media but may not understand the marketing strategies behind everything that they're doing. Very important that you somehow synthesize those two skills, the ability to really communicate the brand essence on behalf of your winery and the knowledge and expertise to manage social media platforms in a way that's successful. So how do you make it successful? Well, you make it easy, fun, and memorable, or in the best of all possible worlds, you make it epic. Now, that's the goal of every social media campaign, is to be epic. The photo here, of course, I always love using Burning Man as an example because we talk about wineries that have difficulty getting people to come to the winery. They don't, we'd like to increase our visitor traffic. Well, Burning Man gets, what now, 100,000 people to drive out in the middle of a desert every year. That's good marketing. And it's because they understand their consumer, and they offer that consumer what the consumer really wants, which is an epic and memorable experience. And the fact that you make your wine from grapes grown in southeastern Australia is not memorable, it's not epic, and that's not what you should talk about. You need to talk about things that touch people in their heart, in their soul, like Burning Man. And finally, FaceTime. Talking to your customers directly is always better than Facebook. I love this photo of a bunch of people having dinner at clearly a wine-centric restaurant. And we noticed that in the foreground there's one bottle of beer and everybody's staring at their phone. That's a problem. And for example, I remember years ago I used to give a lecture on social media. And in those days, I think it was an ad for Subaru that pointed out that my parents don't have friends because they were always out doing things. And meanwhile, the daughter was sitting at home on her phone, texting her friends, but in fact not doing anything. And the daughter's point was, my parents need a life. And of course, the parents were going out in their Subaru, driving up mountains and kayaking and doing all these wonderful things that they loved. Not sure it was Subaru, but it was a concept. In those days, an awful lot of people in my generation said, I don't have Facebook friends, I have real friends. And they seemed to think that Facebook was a substitute for building real friendships. I think they completely misunderstood it. But Facebook in general, for most people, is a way to stay in touch with friends that they have made in person, but don't have the time to connect with them on a regular basis in person. But the key element here for marketing is those people were friends before they started following each other on Facebook. And that's a key element here to wine marketing. If you want to really have valuable Facebook friends, then you need to meet those people in person first. You need to build that relationship. You need to create that relationship in person. And then you can follow up with Facebook, and it will be much more successful. So the idea of a social media campaign to gain a bunch of Facebook friends, I don't think is particularly valuable. The idea of creating a series of events where you meet people and those people then begin to follow you on Facebook, that is a much more effective use, in my opinion, for wine marketing in general. So think about that as you think of your goals and your activities in terms of marketing. How are you going to use social media? Are you going to simply say, oh, we live on the internet, or rather, the social media platforms are merely an auxiliary activity that supports our more direct in-person human connection with the customers we know and love and care about? And I hope that gives you a sense of how to approach social media.